It's 6 o'clock. I will now call to order the September 14th, 2015 meeting of the Easthampton Conservation Commission. The meeting is being recorded. There's a sign-in sheet going around the room. Thank you. If you could keep it moving, and if anyone comes in afterward while it's still out there, send it their way, please. All right. Are there any public concerns, non-agenda items? Being none, we'll move on to, we have no public hearings or meetings, no requests for certificates of compliance, and no emergency certifications. Enforcement order, status update. Bernard Gall, 37 South Street, EO-2013-001. Earlier this spring, the Commission performed a site visit and followed up with a letter to Mr. Gall. There is a provision in the compliance documents
we
about
removed.
managing invasive species. Are you managing your
There's a
invasives?
few more I gotta take out.
Okay.
They keep growing.
They do. Does the Commission want to schedule a follow-up site visit?
When will that be?
Well,
Usually
look
Monday
at the
nights.
calendar. So our next meeting is the 28th, which would make the next Monday night the 21st.
Correct.
6 p.m.
You can do that.
Thank you.
September 21st.
Okay.
6 p.m.
6 p.m.
Okay.
Thank you. Moving on to compliance updates. Mount Tom Estates, Mass DEP file number 151248. Is there anyone here for this? Okay. Then we will deal with it under general business.
Yes.
Next item, Hall Street Extension, Gillian Estates. We have a bi-weekly construction compliance report.
Yep.
We have
We have
two.
2 of them for the past 2 weeks, so we're good.
Thank you. And stable, no signs.
Yeah, that looks good.
Okay. Okay. Next item, Pleasant Street Mills, Mass DEP file number 151273. Ashley, you did a site visit?
I did. On Friday I ran down and back what's that? Literally. There's so let's see, at the far west end of the Eastworks building, they were digging out a trench of some kind from the building towards the bike path, and there's some big stacks of railroad ties, and a little bit further towards the intersection with Ferry Street is the fence that opens and closes depending on the work that's going on.
Mhm.
And it seems as though with that digging at the west end of the building, the phase 1-2 boundary is perhaps a little bit beyond that, but then everything beyond that seems totally grown in, stable, overgrown perhaps even, except for that one section that seems a little shady, but I don't know what would grow there. I mean, it seems quite shady. And it's also, I feel like the topography is such that it's not gonna run down anywhere, so.
So you think the site is
I
stable
think the
enough to
site is-
remove the phase 1 controls?
Absolutely.
So
That is stable enough.
just the lead and fund that. Thank you.
The email correspondence between the commission and the contractor was something about spray painting the limits of his removal. And there was something about marking with spray paint.
There was
where-
not a response to that, and
Okay.
Ashley went out anyway.
Okay, so that's, don't worry about that now?
Nope.
Okay,
Just
all
do
right,
good.
okay. I'll let
Make
him
sure
know.
the site stays stable after that.
And you should be up to date now on compliance reports. A whole batch
That's
was sent
correct.
last week, so
Yep.
you should now be up to
These
date.
ones?
Those are all those right there, so we're good.
Great.
All right.
All right,
Thank you.
Glendale, Leadville, West Palmer Meadow intersection, 151271, no change. And that is set to expire October 22nd.
And I did let him know, and he said Jim Gracious said that he would contact the state,
Okay.
and I've heard no update since.
Nashwatic Mills, 15 Cottage Street, Arch Street Development, 151265.
I have not seen any added plants to the rain garden locations.
I did walk through there over the weekend, and the site is stable.
Yes, that's
Still.
stable.
Okay. Connecticut River Oxbow, 151279. No updates.
It's under general business anyway, if Terry's here.
Oh,
He
that's
is, he just
different,
was
isn't
in.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
So look at
We
that as
could,
general
we could
business.
always ping them under that.
That's a different one though. Yes.
Oh, it is.
That's
Oh,
the
sorry.
parking lot.
That's the-
Gotcha, sorry.
I think they were just really wondering when the certificate of compliance is gonna come
Do you
through.
wanna ask
Yeah.
Harry? He's here somewhere.
We'll ask him when he
Oh,
comes
okay.
in.
All right.
All right, next item, City of Easthampton, Town Beach Nashwauk Pond Fisherman Access Facility, 151282. As we've been saying, we actually have that further down under general business to follow discussion on stormwater features. So we'll deal with that under general business. Lathrop Community, DEP file number 151283 for plant management.
So the project's on hold till spring 2016,
Okay.
and they'll notify us when they commence the work in 2016.
Perfect. Thank you. Scommon Conservation Trust, Meadow Field, parking and accessible trails, DEP file number 151284.
There's no
Nothing.
start yet.
Okay.
They'll contact us when it's ready to start.
Okay. All right. Moving on to general business, 311 East Street, Mount Tom Estates, DEP file number 151248. We received a request to extend the order of conditions for 1 year. If anyone's interested, it is within the commission's discretion, provided the request is submitted at least 30 days prior to date of expiration. This permit was set to expire on October 10th, 2015. We received the request in August 17th, 2015, which was too late for the next August meeting, but in time for this one's deadline. There are units 3 and 4, all units are complete with the exception of one duplex, units 3 and 4, and the landscaping work in the buffer zone. Technically, Dan and I were the only two commissioners around when this project was previously permitted. It's a long-running condo development on East Street. Ran into some problems with the previous developer, was taken on by a new developer, and it sounds like they're getting ready to wrap it up, so.
I move we extend the order of conditions for 1 year to expire October 10th, 2016.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Can you pass that on?
Go ahead, you can sign it anywhere.
Anywhere you want.
In one of these stashes. That's the worst signature ever. I did, I put a hole in it too. It's a violet pen.
Yeah, I guess I should do that. There's the worst.
That's the most efficient one of all of you.
You're the best at being the least legible. Congratulations. What's today, September 14th, I just said it, didn't I? Make the necessary copies. All right, next item. Terry, do you want to come forward?
Sure.
Right, Water Lane, City of Easthampton, Town Beach, Nashwauk Pond Fisherman Access Facility, DEP file number 151282. Discussion of construction phase modifications to stormwater management features and status of construction. Introduce yourself for the record, please.
Okay, Terry Smith, I'm from the Fishing Game Department for the state fishing and boating access. I was a designer for the project as well as the constructor. And stuff, so I was out there for about 3 months. Has the commission gone by? Have you guys
From the water.
looked at the site? Okay, recently?
Last weekend.
Okay,
The last time I went by was not paved, so I don't know if you've paved it.
yeah, no, it's not.
Okay.
The bid for the paving will go out on this Wednesday. It will be in the central register. So the balance of the work along with any touch-ups to the site, like in terms of stabilization, anything like that, will be done at that time.
Okay.
After the paving work, there's berm that has to go in, so there's some loam and seed work that remains behind the berms and stuff.
It looks stable, so, I mean,
Yeah, it's got a healthy stand of grass. I took some photos of it tonight, just in case there was any commission members or anyone that hasn't been by recently to see what it is. So the question came up at the end of the construction when I was out there. I had to send the equipment away, so I sent an email to the commission, let them know that project was coming to an end. And then I get a comment back questioning the change in the stormwater surfaces to stone. So that's why I was asked to come tonight to explain that. Basically what I observed during the construction, going down, actually the 4-bay area was built the way that it was. Everything was built to the lines and grades that were proposed, okay? So it's a matter of the functionality of the stormwater system as what was designed. The 4-bay in the approved notice of intent was always proposed to be modified stone. Says it right in the, understand it. There's basically 2 stormwater standards where this, from a functional standpoint, comes into play. One is recharge, groundwater recharge. So when you size from an engineering standpoint, the stormwater, whatever you have, whether it's stone line, grass line, basically you have an impervious versus pervious. So we have pervious area there in the swales. So from a recharge standpoint, there's no impact. So then the other standard that comes into play is TSS removal. And the TSS removal, reference here,
Just gonna move the garbage can because you shouldn't have.
so water quality swales, basically whether it's grass lined, stone lined, or anything, they fall under the same, from a functional standpoint, the same category of whether you have 4 inches of mulch, which is pervious, 4 inches of stone, which is pervious. So in terms of a TSS removal, there's really not an issue. So to me, any question on it really comes down to an aesthetics issue. Someone was expecting grass versus stone. And my simple answer would be let the site basically, establish itself to what it's gonna be. They both require maintenance. You either have to annually go in and fluff the mulch and change the mulch, or you go into the swales and you remove any type of unwanted vegetation that you have. Requires maintenance on the city's part for both standpoints. What my decision as the designer to change it when I was out there building it came down to one thing. There was a high velocity of water that was going down the driveway that then goes into the 4-bay and into the swales, and I was observing erosion problems. So in order to stabilize it, I thought the best thing to do, modified rock can handle a higher velocity than any type of vegetation would. And so in terms of a stabilization standpoint, I thought that it would be better. Maybe I should have called the commission and asked their opinion. There were people from the city that did come out, look at it, not for that specific purpose, but I really didn't see there. I thought I was doing a good thing. I'm trying to address, make sure that the city who's gonna take over the site isn't gonna have a problem going forward with maybe a potential problem with continually having to go in and reestablish vegetation and stuff. So that's basically the gist of why it's stone versus a grass line swale. is basically from, you know, from my standpoint, as I felt, it would, you know, in the long term would be less maintenance for the city. It would help the site establish itself better initially. So, that's the simplest explanation I can give you from, in terms of the stormwater standards that we have to meet. You know, there's really no, from a functional standpoint, really no impact. It was designed so that we had to provide a certain volume for stormwater recharge, the water quality, which basically is no change because the bottom of the swale is still infiltrates. And then from a TSS standpoint, my calculations basically with the street sweeping requirement, the water quality, basically when you look at this chart here that you use, an infiltration trench has a design rate of 80%, which is the same design rate as a grassline bioretention area. So from a functional standpoint, it's the same. An aesthetic standpoint, I don't know, the neighbors in the neighborhood no, you know, really haven't come out and said, geez, this is really ugly. I mean, everyone's kind of complimented it more than anything.
So from a stormwater perspective, does anyone have any? My goal was to understand function versus aesthetics, and if the design criteria are still met, then the decision the commission made about stormwater compliance with stormwater management would still be upheld, valid. So.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, you know, this will function the right way. My goal was just to see that in a public forum, we discuss the change and.
No, I
Yeah.
totally agree, and I think you should, you know, should understand why. I think, you know, again, going forward, the city's gonna be responsible for this long term, so whether you go there, you mow the grass swale or weed whack it to keep it open and invasives and stuff out, or you go into a stone swale, and if you see invasives that you don't want to pick them out, it's kind of doing the same thing.
If it's providing more site stability, that's even better.
But I was honestly having trouble during the construction. We had some really heavy rains, and the edges of the swales washed out. I actually had to pull, I'm gonna have to end up, in one area, I'm gonna end up having to pull making the paved parking area a little bit narrower, so I can create a little bit of a vegetated area from the back of the berm into the swale, just to pull it away so that the slope of the swale remains stable and there's.
And that'll be seeded with.
It'll be seeded with
grass.
Yeah. So basically what you see out there, and it may be a little, you know, misleading right now, is anywhere where it's graveled area, there still the pavement stays in from the swales. There's a berm that goes in, and then there's still vegetation that goes behind it. And then the upper two retention areas, the paving is in, and then there'll be a vegetated strip before it drops into the stone swale. So there's basically around the perimeter of what I have graded there now, there's 2 to 3 feet of grass vegetation that is gonna go in, and then berm or no berm. But everything else is pretty much built. The forebay area we had discussed at the initial site visit, there's a big oak tree on the corner. Trying to excavate that and leave the tree in place so there'd be no tree cutting. That was done, so I enlarged the flood storage area away from the pond to compensate for leaving another area as it was. So, and then again, all the grades of the site, the lines and grades, slopes and everything of the site are what's designed. So.
When you were there, Melissa, was silk curtain totally
Still
up?
in-
Because last time I was there, it was not intact, so I don't know if you've.
I didn't inspect it for that, but it didn't appear.
Right now I have,
Broken.
to stabilize it at the top, there's a gate that's gonna go in. So up at the top, I have straw wattle across that, which is kind of slowing any runoff going down. And then right at the top of the boat ramp, there's another straw wattle. And then there's about 2 or 3 feet of crushed stone, so anything that, would go over that would go into the crushed stone. And then our floating silt boom with the curtain that goes all the way, that's still in place.
The last time I was there, part of the silk curtain just to the left, if you're facing the water of the boom, was.
I think the
raised.
water levels come up some from over the pad, probably with some more recent rains. It was, we had rain for a couple months when I was out there, but I think the water levels 3 or 4 inches higher than when I was there, which probably would leave a gap in the curtain on each side.
And I noticed today that the orange fence has
Yeah.
also been.
Yeah, I think that what's happening with that is that people are using the site and they're, from what the neighbors had told me, that they're, people with kayaks are, just dragging them over the fence, so.
It's the idea that it is a closed site right now.
Right.
Is it signed that way?
I don't know
No,
if
we
there's a
don't have
sign
a-
up there. I know that when the project started, we put something on the planning department Facebook page notifying people that the site was under active construction and would be closed until further notification, but maybe there should be a sign that's actually up there, I don't know.
Maybe you can refresh that reminder to those
Sure.
who have.
I mean, it's similar to what happens on the Mills project. People have places they wanna get to, they'll
Yeah.
take down whatever they want, whatever's there to get to where they wanna go.
And I tried to work with them, if they would come when I was working there, if it was a day where I didn't have a lot of trucks coming in and out. I mean, you go launch your kayak, go park wherever some people from the neighborhood come down and don't park, so it's not really an issue to me. I mean, it's a safe site right now. So, I just basically have the fence up because I don't want people going in there and
Driving in there.
driving in the grass, because
Right.
I have it pretty much fine graded with the exception of a couple touch-up areas, pretty much fine graded to what it needs to be for the paving, so.
So you said the paving bid's gonna be advertised this Wednesday?
It's advertised Wednesday, the bid opening's October 1st. And then, we've given the contractor until November 15th to pave it, but hopefully, we'll get someone in there that can do it during the month of October. I mean, there's only 2 days worth of paving there, so it really depends upon who gets the job.
All right.
And their availability.
Are there any other questions, comments, concerns? While we have you here, it's kind of been an ongoing question about the Connecticut River Oxbow. Is that something you envision having downtime to submit a certificate of
Yeah,
compliance for?
there was an issue with that when I filed, when I went to the registry of deeds to file the order of conditions for the site. So,
Okay.
So I just have to,
Work that out?
I have to work that out
Okay,
with my office.
okay.
Should we bump that ahead a couple months so we don't have to talk about it more every single 2 weeks?
We'll just, we'll just,
update, until we get the update.
Yeah, that'll be taken care of. I just have to, I think when it came up, there's some financial issues that need to be resolved with that. At the registry.
okay. All right, well, we'll wait to hear from you on that one. So, no further discussion?
No?
We're all set?
Okay.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next item under, thanks, you
Thank you.
too. Next item under general business, 125 Northampton Street area, multiple parcels, Bernard Gall owner. Discussion of Mass DEP Western Region correspondence, City of Easthampton Stormwater Protection Ordinance. After our last meeting, one of the results was to reach out to Mass DEP Western Region Wetlands Program to request that they perform their own evaluation investigation. They did, on September 2nd, David Cameron, the section chief, emailed the Conservation Commission. So so everyone, it's basically a summary of what DEP did. And I will essentially paraphrase, and then anyone who wants to read it is welcome to read it. DEP's analysis involved review of historic GIS data for Assessor's Map 129, Lot 39, owned by Bernard Gall. For reference, the DEP analyst that conducted this work is considered an expert in the field and started their career conducting countless similar aerial image interpretation evaluations while working as a wetland scientist for the National Wetlands Inventory of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. DEP's analysis concludes that an isolated, vegetated wetland, which did retain some open water, existed from at least 1998 through around 2005 in the agricultural field at this site. DEP digitally measured and presented square footage for this feature in the attachments, which are aerial images from 1998, 2001, and 2009. Their statement is that it does not exceed 2,567 square feet and is not observable after 2005. Ephemeral moisture patterns, which may have supported hydrophytes or wetland vegetation, did occur, but never exceeded 9,034 square feet total. This figure is the sum of both open water and possible hydrophyte dominance. The feature in question appears at its closest point over 474 feet from the mean annual high water line of the Manhan River. The feature is also external of and does not occur within bordering land subject to flooding, otherwise known as the 100-year floodplain as mapped by FEMA. Estimated habitats of rare wetlands wildlife, buffer zone to any mapped resource area, potential or certified vernal pools, or superficial hydrologic connections. Based upon the above, Mass DEP does not see a legal basis whereby the Easthampton Conservation Commission or Mass DEP, is able to exert jurisdiction over the site under the Wetlands Protection Act. The feature was too small to meet the definition of pond because of its diminutive size, less than 10,000 square feet, and because of the ephemeral and seasonal nature of surface inundation. Nor does this feature meet any of the other definitions of resource area, and it appears to have been situated well beyond the 200-foot riverfront area of the Manhan River. Should the Commission or the concerned citizens of Highland Avenue possess additional documentation to present which demonstrate the area was larger in size than what Mass DEP has determined, or data that show it was connected through surface hydrology to downstream waters, the department would be happy to revisit this case. I'm sorry. I understand you may have been trying to coordinate a meeting. Okay, we did try to coordinate a meeting, but that fell through with representatives of the city, the commission, and Mass DEP. David Cameron then offered to have any concerned residents contact him directly, and I understand several have. So if anyone, this was forwarded to commission members, if anyone would like to.
Can I just take a photo of it, please? Whoops,
Yep.
sorry.
David Cameron, what is what?
He
what's
is
the title?
the Western Region Wetlands Section Chief. There's more
Is
email.
that another page?
That's the second page.
These are just photos
These are the aerial photo interpretations.
of the, yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So with that piece of information, does the commission have any?
Well, so that was one of the actions that we had, was to contact DEP. Another was that Mr. Gall was going to provide the person who hayed the field. He has provided that information.
He has. I spoke with Mr. Baldock. He indicated, let me revisit my notes. He indicated that he last cut hay and he took site photographs, so we went to the date of the photograph. He cut hay July 23rd, 2015 and baled the hay approximately 3 days later. He indicated he's been cutting hay at this location for 2 to 3 years. The purpose of the hay is, I had a bit of a problem with my pagination there. The purpose of the cutting of the hay is to provide feed for dairy and beef cattle at a farm in Westfield.
Another action item was Commissioner Ryan was gonna contact the Board of Health regarding historical mosquito control.
Right, so I spoke with the health agent, Jackie Dudo. While I was sitting there, she called Charlie Tanicki, who was the health agent prior to Dennis LaCour, and spoke to him on the phone, and he was the health agent or whatever it was called at the time. And he said around the mid-70s there was mosquito control measures taken in that area, but there's no real documentation or photos. He recommended, and Jackie recommended, that we look at the USDA soil surveys. I did that to some degree. They were not as clear as some of the photos that we've been looking at, just aerial photos, so there was nothing really in depth there.
Okay.
Those were all the actions.
All right. So I guess at this point, Mr. Gall, would you like to say anything at this point? Or no?
No, I was just,
Listen.
maybe you got some questions for me.
Well, the discussion that I had with Mr. Bolduc suggests that there's been active agricultural use through haying for 2 to 3 years. He indicated he cut around 50 bales of hay this year during his first cut. He accessed the site on July 23rd with his own equipment from Route 10.
So there was allegations that no hay was cut there.
There were concerns that hay had not been cut from that field and that the land was not in active agricultural use.
And the area exceeded 10,000 square feet.
DEP,
Place in question.
right, and DEP did an independent analysis of aerial photos and concluded that it does not meet the criteria.
It'd have to be 50 by 200 feet long to exceed 10,000 square feet, or a diameter of 112 feet. That's still, 112 feet, still under 10,000 square feet if you calculate it. And it's nowhere near that as they.
So at this point, does the commission have any discussion relative to the haying of the field?
What's
Hague
the-
is gonna continue with the field and has been performed, for
Good.
several years.
Been there forever. The old fence lines are there when they were pasturing it.
How is the field now? Is it, is the hay, is the seeds taking, are the seeds taking now?
Yeah.
Why was there that gap in time from the last haying until the seeds were put down again?
You have to speak louder, I can't.
Oh, sorry about that. Why was there the gap in time from when?
I've been farming too long.
Why was there the gap in time from when this field was hayed to when it was seeded again? Because I understood that it hadn't been seeded until right before the last site visit. Sorry.
Right.
It
Did
kind
you
of
hear it?
ran out and I reseeded it about 4 years ago. I think Jessica was there.
Only been
Or-
here 3, so it could have been 4, but,
We had
but there
last
was, it
discussed
was about
this in
2 years
2013.
ago.
2 years ago, yeah,
Yes,
I
I have
seeded it.
photographs of seed bags. There was a call that was placed into the office and I went out in the middle of the day.
Okay.
Mr. Gall, when I spoke with Mr. Bolduc, he indicated that he provided you with photographs from when he
Yes,
did that
I
work. Is that
emailed
something?
some.
Yeah, they,
You did,
Mr. Gull
okay.
emailed 2 photographs,
Okay,
and there's in the commission records.
okay. You didn't have the printed?
I did not print them.
Okay,
Nope.
so we,
It's actually attached to the exact same email that has his name on it. It's just,
okay,
there are 2 attachments in there. I could bring it up on the screen if you'd like to look at them,
that'd
sure.
be great.
I'll take a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem. Well, it's all good. This would have been after our last meeting, so this would be
You printed an email dated August 28th.
August 28th. Actually, this is organized by subject.
Melissa,
Yes.
just an aside question, if a resource area, or if something is too small to be a resource area, like.
Under the Wetlands Protection Act?
Right, but if it's in bordering land subject to flooding, would that make it jurisdictional?
It doesn't make it bordering.
Yeah.
I can confirm that. Can you pass that reminder? But it would be jurisdictional as bordering land subject to flooding, at the very least.
Oh, okay, I see. Maybe that's statement, yeah.
So, areas subject to protection include any bank, freshwater, wetland, coastal wetland, beach, dune, flat, marsh, swamp bordering on the ocean, any estuary, creek, river, stream, pond, or lake. And then land under any of the water bodies listed above, subject to tidal action, not a problem here yet, coastal storm flowage, land subject to flooding, and riverfront area. So if it were within land subject to flooding or riverfront area, it would be in a jurisdictional area.
Mhm.
But it wouldn't make it bordering vegetated wetland. Bordering vegetated wetland has to border on
Gotcha.
something that meets those definitions.
So wetland, that's too small to be a wetland, if you put it in BLSF or something else, it still
Is
doesn't.
DLSF.
It's BLSF, it doesn't make it anything else.
Right.
Yep.
So here's one of two
Oh.
photos. I don't see a timestamp on it, or date stamp on it.
Okay.
And there's a second one.
Oh, that's
I just have to,
do it.
yeah, I just have
Okay,
to,
sorry.
there.
Now, look, you can go out there and check the trees in the back, that'll verify that it was there.
This is the second photo. Is that time? They are,
So I think I just heard a question.
Yeah.
And it's, if the wetland's not a wetland, why does it matter?
Right.
And the answer is, from my perspective, and my understanding from the lack of further discussion under the Wetlands Protection Act is that is there general concurrence that the area is not subject to Wetlands Protection Act jurisdiction?
I agree.
So then that moves us on to the next question, the local stormwater ordinance. And the local stormwater ordinance, Dan Buttrick could speak to it better than I can, but basically there is an exemption from the land disturbance area thresholds for land and active agricultural use. And that definition of agricultural use was based on the Wetlands Protection Act definition, which includes, you can find it.
Well, so this is the stormwater ordinance now, and an exemption is, so an exemption from the need to submit for approval a stormwater management plan include, normal maintenance and improvement of land and agricultural use as defined by the Wetlands Protection Act regulations of 310 CMR 10.04.
Normal main and improvement is exempted under the local stormwater ordinance. No, the need to submit a stormwater management plan is exempted for normal maintenance and improvement
Of land and agriculture.
of land and agriculture as defined in the Mass.
Yeah.
Wetlands. Okay, thank you
Yep.
very much.
So,
is that public? Or, I mean, I haven't even seen it.
time, we'll open it up to limited public comment. Please identify yourself for the record.
Dan Hagan from the City Council. Just a couple of points of clarification about the haying. I think if we go back to the last meeting, I think, and Mr. Gall can correct me if this isn't, I believe 2 years ago when Jessica was out there with the hayseed, that seeded the highway business area, not the part where the bagel shop, I'll go back in time, not
Right.
where the bagel shop was gonna be, that was never seeded, it was, the highway business part was seeded and has been hayed, I believe that was set. I think what the concern of these residents was the section that's R15, that's further down the field, I believe that's the area that the majority of the excavation, filling and everything has been taking place recently. And I believe that's the one that the residents said hadn't been hayed in their recent times. So I just wanted to put that out there, that no one ever said that the highway business part wasn't hayed. I believe I said that at the last meeting. In terms of, and again, I'll try to be brief, I just want to say for the record that I'm very disappointed in the state DEP that they don't have the concern to come out here in person. You know, again, Easthampton is important, and I know Mr. Cameron says he's busy, but to me, I go to a lot of meetings, and when you have this many residents, I think, and again, I know you don't control the state, so I can't put it on the Conservation Commission, but, you know, I think it's, because again, I just would have liked to, and again, anyone, I'm not a mathematician, but this is what the state says is open water, which is 50, just what I'm saying, this is their official map, says it's 15 to 20. And then I asked Mr. Cameron on the phone about this one, which is very similar to his. This was the Google Earth one, and said, would you look at that? And he said, well, while that looked, because these lots are all 100, so you can see this is well in excess of 200 across here. He said, well, that one was taken on an angle. Now, I'm not a satellite person, but I would assume most all satellites are not directly over the thing. I mean, I assume they take somewhat an angle. So again, it's hard on a telephone conversation, and I don't know what other residents were told. I just found it a little, and again, all I think from the start, anyone here was ever after was that make sure everything was being done above board. And I guess how something can go from these maps down to a mere 2,500 square feet of open water and 9,000 of other vegetated wetland. Again, was the state that inept when they did this hand drawing? I mean, again, that's 5 to 6 times larger than 2,500 square feet, and it says right there, open water. Again, I know those were old ways they did it, but somebody had to come out and look at it, and you're talking 6 times the size. So, again, I'm very disappointed that the state wouldn't come out, and also Mr. Stinson was gonna come out. I knew he was busy. Nobody said he had to come tonight. He said he was gonna come out with slides. And those were good questions. I mean, he could put to rest, showing them a map like that. How do they do it? How in this map can an expert? He sounded like he had great credentials. And again, I'm not saying this is for you guys to answer, but how can they say this? What appears to the untrained eye as water? How can they say there's just a little patch in there of 2,500 that's open water and the rest is vegetated? Again, that's a hard question to do by telephone. And I'm not blaming you folks because you don't control the state, but I found it very disappointing by them that they wouldn't at least come out, or say at some point they would come out. Again, I didn't necessarily expect them to come out tonight. They're very busy in that. But again, I don't know if any of the other residents have anything to say.
Thank you. Are there any other? Yes? Just
Sure.
identify yourself for the record. Thank you.
Anna Pop, did they even spell that one for you?
I got it.
Okay.
Not this time.
41 Highland Ave. Thank you for following up on all those points of action. I really appreciate that. So moving forward from here, I stated last time I have concerns about kind of the water levels. Have we learned anything? Do we know anything? Is there anything kind of established moving forward about the property around there? I mean, are we still working on the 1970 whatever flood maps? Has any of this moved us forward anywhere for having a more modern interpretation of our land? Or was it only that one piece of land?
I don't know if or when the flood maps for Hampshire County are going to be updated.
Sure.
That would make a lot of people's lives easier if they were.
Yeah.
Just because the maps get better. or easier to read. As for the commission's jurisdiction, I don't think we have, under the Wetlands Protection Act, I don't think we have the authority to take action.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay, so I guess help me understand
Okay.
what you're saying.
I'm just wondering if any of what transpired between the state and stuff, I'm not asking for any action. I just want to know, do we have a more modern understanding of, a more up-to-date understanding of the land and the vegetation and the wetness and the just all the muck that comes with living on a red maple swamp?
So, I'm guessing you live on the north side of Highland Avenue?
Yes.
Okay. So, the land, and I'll just very briefly, just based on looking at the maps there over and over and over, the land on the south, the land that abuts the residents on the south side has a very different character than the land that abuts the properties on the north side. And I don't know exactly where watershed boundaries lie, but that's
Okay. But this
probably
doesn't
a big
change.
factor, and that doesn't, it's okay, that doesn't, I guess that doesn't change what the commission can do right now.
Okay, and it doesn't change anything about the maps that we might use, or
No.
we know nothing new today than we knew yesterday, essentially.
Essentially, there's no new information available, other than a caveat that the Mass GIS wetlands mapping, Mass GIS puts a disclaimer on that and basically says, this is kind of like a best guess aerial interpretation at the time based on the photos that they had, and it's not a substitute for
Okay.
ground survey.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other comments? Are there any, sorry, yes.
I was a little
Um,
confused.
Sorry, could you identify yourself for the
Oh,
record first? Thank you.
Nancy Latino, I live on Easthampton Street. I was.
Sorry, could you just spell that for me, please, so I get it right?
Two T's, two L's.
Lat-
Lattinvale.
V-A-L-E, okay, on Northampton Street.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I had a question, I was a little confused about the zoning. You said it was R15. What is R15?
I will defer to our planner if she's willing to provide a brief explanation, only because the Conservation Commission doesn't have anything to do with zoning or zoning districts.
I understand, but.
It's a residential district. So the uses that happen in the R15 district are primarily residential. Uses that happen in the highway business district, any future projects that are zoned under the highway business districts are primarily commercial. The only residential use that's allowed in a highway business district is a multifamily. No single-family houses, no duplexes. It really defines what types of activities can happen in each of these zones, and there's dimensional requirements that are associated with them. Lot sizes, frontage requirements, that sort of thing.
Okay, then you guys were talking about agricultural
Mhm.
use, and I know that the issue of haying came up, but if the land is actually R15 zoned, even if it's hay, don't the rules of the zoning for R15 apply?
Agricultural is exempt under zoning, under mass laws, zoning laws.
But it doesn't the whole property need to be zoned agricultural for it to
No,
be
that we don't
exempt?
have an agricultural zone. What I'm telling you is agricultural uses are exempt under the state zoning laws and also under our local zoning laws. Again, depending on the size of the acres. If it's over 5 acres, there's a agricultural exemption. It can be in anywhere in the city. It can be in a residential zone, it can be in a commercial zone. If there's agricultural activity happening over 5 acres on a parcel, they're exempt from zoning.
Okay, so was that over 5 acres of haying?
I don't know about the size of the haying, but the parcel is over 5 acres.
But if the whole parcel wasn't used, is it considered?
It doesn't necessarily have to be all completely used as agricultural use. There are, this is getting off topic,
If
but
we could wrap, yeah, if you could.
But there are people who
summarize.
actually live on the same property as their agricultural. So they have a single family house, they live in it, and they have the farm behind them. They don't have to necessarily farm the whole thing. Some of it can be wood, some of it can be buffer. We can have, if you wanna meet afterwards, I can certainly talk to you in more detail about that, but that's not commission's jurisdiction right now.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
Can I just one point of, oh, okay, was there something, go ahead.
Gentleman next to you.
Kenneth Bushy, 43 Highland Avenue.
Okay, thank you.
For the record, I'm pretty satisfied with the findings by the DEP in their terms. I'm not going to argue with their rules. But on August 27th, there was a interview done. It was put on Mass Live, and in it, you had mentioned that you stated that you wouldn't go on a witch hunt.
Mhm.
Why did you consider our concerns a witch hunt?
Because we'd addressed this in 2013. We addressed the size of the resource area and determined at that time that it was not jurisdictional under the Wetlands Protection Act. We restated those findings, and the residents have pursued this during the course of, I think this is the third meeting now? So we have no, then the second, we have no authority to take action against Mr. Gall or any other property owner. And I'm uncomfortable with targeting. I understand your concerns. There was an area that supported wetland vegetation. It's not there now. I am very respectful of the boundaries established for this commission under the Wetlands Protection Act and the Stormwater Ordinance, and I do not want to abuse those boundaries. I feel like we pursued the concerns in 2013, and we pursued them again now. And if there's reason to believe that there is a problem in the future that's within the commission's jurisdiction, we'll make a determination at that time.
I understand that. I was a bit offended by the witch hunt comment. I'm sorry, but you know, we did state at the meeting that whatever is found is found. We're just concerned. And as somebody who works with wildlife and knows the laws, I had some concerns. If I didn't measure this prior to, but I had some concerns, and I just feel like my name was in the article, and I feel slighted because I feel like you were calling us witch hunters, and we just had concerns. Like I said, if the DEP and the powers to be, including you, find it legal, then that was fine, but I think public statements should be a little more cautionary.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
Just one point of clarification. The exemptions from that, the stormwater, you said is agriculture. The state regulations say commercial. Is there a definition for commercial agriculture?
Well, so the state regulations, the State Wetland Protection Act regulations?
I was just reading the DEP things, and it says that it has to be, it's down here, for the purposes of 310 CMR 1004, the following words and phrases shall have the following meanings. Land and agricultural use means land within the resource area, presently or primarily used in producing or raising the following agricultural commodities for commercial purposes. And then it goes on to say, and I was just wondering if there's a definition of what constitutes commercial versus, again, in other words, if someone's haying it for their own use, is that commercial? Is it commercial if are they selling it? You know, in other words, I guess I'm just asking the question. This one I'm not putting it on you, but you're using state regulation. Again, another reason I would have liked the state to come down here and who work with it and answer the question directly. You know, again, and I know you don't control the state, but I guess that's our frustration here, is sometimes you can't always get the questions. And a little about what Mr. Bush is, this was new excavating, again, Mr. Gall, I mean, he was out there for 6 or 7 weeks digging and hauling fill, bringing in fill, and I think people have concerns when there were new areas. There was cutting near the canal that wasn't done back in 2 years ago, at least clearing out. I think these are legitimate questions that residents at least have a right to come to their city and have addressed. And I think, you know, again, this is your findings, nobody's saying that, and I think if you would have to admit that that's all that he was ever said from the start, that we want to make sure everything's done above board and within the regulations, and, you know.
So I'm not, I guess I will speak very briefly to commercial, and I understand that it's for financial gain. And so my understanding is that the cutting of hay for, in this case, my understanding is that it's feed for dairy and beef cows. I don't know the proper terminology. Unfortunately, I'm not that well versed in farming. But that it's used for those purposes. And so I would see the two as being related to commercial uses.
Yeah, I really wasn't even going to this
Mhm.
particular, I was just kind of in general, what is commercial, in other words, what is, that's kind of a catch-all phrase, I mean, do you
would
have to be
say-
getting money, or can you be bartering it, can you be giving it to friends,
Is
I
there a
guess?
definition in the regs for commercial?
There's
You
a
get what
state
I'm saying? Can you
There's a
be-
state definition of agriculture,
Under the Wetlands Protection Act or
under
somewhere
the
else?
state mass general laws.
Okay.
And there are some revenue numbers that are associated with that, I would have to go pull them, but they're not very high.
Mhm.
To quantify what would be commercial.
Okay, that's a
Thank you.
good question, thank you.
Yep.
Can I just have one more of a bigger topic in relation to this, is if the city still had a local wetlands ordinance,
Mhm.
if it wasn't repealed,
Mhm.
would this area have then been subject?
It would depend on what's defined as a jurisdictional resource area in that local ordinance.
I don't think any of us were here when the old ordinance was in effect, so we're not familiar with what it's.
Repealed.
It was
What
repealed in
98.
1998,
Yeah,
based on the city's zoning, or, ordinances on the website,
Right, 1998.
so.
And I wasn't on the city council, so I can't tell you what
Thank
was there
you.
either, so.
Right, but I mean, my point being that
If we
this,
had one,
if,
this
if
would be
we
more
had one, and
effective.
if the commission has discussed having a local wetlands ordinance, that, you know, that would be a good time for people to be present and to speak to why it would be important to have a local wetlands ordinance if the commission does draft one in the future.
Yeah, and if that's not clear, basically, the city could define things more stringently than the State Wetlands Protection Act. So instead of 10,000 square feet, it could be 5,000 square feet. Or it could be isolated vegetated wetlands are subject to jurisdiction, not just bordering vegetated wetlands. And it can change, at least at the local level, the character of how the land is managed.
of course, the cost of administering a local ordinance is probably a lot higher, because we can't go ask to DEP for interpretation.
Right, DEP will not comment on local bylaws or ordinances,
Yeah,
Interesting.
so we would
because
be even
they're not responsible for them.
Right,
more wanting for an agent in that.
right.
Right, that,
Yeah.
That definitely speaks to the need of an agent.
yeah, our workload
Absolutely.
would
Yep.
increase
Yep,
beyond what we even can do now.
yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just have one question. Is there any kind of, this isn't my total expertise, so, is there any kind of buffer zone from agriculture to waterways in law? As far as runoff of pesticides and fertilizers?
That sounds, and I don't know the answer. Is there anything under NIFTY's that you know of?
Not that I know of.
And this is not an answer, this is not intended to be an answer.
Yeah, I just was wondering.
There's a lot of consideration given to historic agricultural practices, historically in agricultural use. So none of these regulations, my understanding is none of these regulations were intended to prohibit or inhibit farmers who've been farming their land from continuing to do so. That's a great question. I'm not sure if that's I don't know of anything in the Wetlands Protection Act, other than that if someone were to come into a piece of land that was either fallow for more than 5 years or had not been used for agriculture, the agricultural use would have to be permitted just like any other project.
What is the rule if I have, say, a 2-acre field that's being agriculture, and I want to expand it, cut trees that are older than 5 years? I know we discussed the keeping it clear, but if I want to expand it, what is the rule?
If it's in an area subject to protection or just jurisdiction of the Wetlands Protection Act, then that that conversion of land use, that new use would be subject to permitting the way any new activity would be. The only difference that I know of is that all other new activities have a 200-foot riverfront area, but agriculture only gets a 100-foot. So instead of a 200-foot riverfront area, for agriculture, it's 100 feet.
So if it's not wetlands, you can expand it
Without coming to the Conservation Commission.
thanks.
You're welcome. I'm sorry, yes.
Hi, Chris Hagan, 24 Highland Ave. I think those of us that did call the state, and this has nothing to do with you folks, but we were told, gee, we're lucky it's a small area we're concerned about because they have hundreds of acres that they're concerned with. But because there are so many neighbors here, one of the concerns that we have had since day one is the water. It's a very fragile area, and Mr. Gall knows that there's a lot of water in that area. And so now that we found that it's not a wetlands, we hope Mr. Gall will understand it may not mean 100 acres to the state, but these are our homes. This is where we've raised our families and continue to. And we trust that he will move, when he moves land, that the water will not now be pushed into our cellars. And that is, and if you see the number of people here, there's at least 18 families represented tonight. And that is our concern. And so, all we wanted was to make sure everything was being done legal and above board, and we'll abide by that. But we do wish that Mr. Gall would make sure that the water, any water, whether it's a puddle or a pond, is moved away from the neighbors. And as a good citizen, and we're good citizens, we hope that that is the case.
Thank you. Are there any other comments at this point? All right, well, I will thank you all for coming again. Appreciate your time and your interest. And we'll move on to our next item.
Has everyone signed the signage sheet? If you haven't, please do before you leave.
What's next on the agenda? Correspondence?
Approval of minutes.
Yeah, I'm just gonna approve minutes and go through the mailbox.
Well, I have my non-agenda item from an email that occurred a couple of weeks ago for 74 Plain Street. Email that came in about whether they could move the silt fence, and I looked at the site and it was stable, except for one small area. So they're going to remove the silt fence, but leave the silt fence down to that attachment where the sewer hookup was going to be. Because that was not grown in as much as the lawn was. If that makes sense to you.
Is this
This is where we went for a site visit. There was the attachment down to that brook, 74 Plain Street. Yes. Maybe you were there?
No, I don't think so.
No, maybe not.
Like the plains.
No, Plain Street. It was kind of.
Plain Street is kind of in the plains.
Yeah.
Is that where Jenny used to live?
Sort of, not really though. She lived off Plain Street. She lived on Warren.
So what was the work that
No,
was done there?
I'm thinking of the sorry, wrong family. Plain Street runs between like the base, almost the base of Mount Tom and Park Line.
Is this the one with
Or strong.
the tower?
No, this is the one where Mark Reed, Heritage Surveys, David Hardy came to us regarding the status of the stream as perennial versus intermittent.
Is that the one where they were going to build a house where the
There was a tennis court or something.
Tennis court they were going to
They wanted to
remove.
put the sewer line down to the bottom.
That's correct, and they did all that. So I believe that the silt fence could be removed in this area, but I asked them to keep it in that area.
Gotcha.
And there was a little washout occurring here. I asked him to put hay bales or straw wall across that one location on that left side.
Okay.
And then there was another email that came in where the homeowner was concerned about cutting some trees, and I thought she was talking about in the buffer zone, but she was talking about trees that were on the edge of her. There are branches hanging down over her lawn, basically.
Okay.
So that the trimming would occur outside the buffer zone or on the edge of the buffer zone in the work limits anyway, so there was no issue, so I told her that was
Okay.
not a problem to
So
remove those.
So
Widow
fence
makers
is
that were
still
hanging.
up then for the time being.
This silt fence
Portion
is
of
up,
A portion of the silt fence.
and the
is
rest
up.
I told her she could remove. I don't know if she did remove it or David Harder removed it, but the lawn was pretty well established.
I'm sorry, can you pass your photos down? I didn't see them.
So the line is all connected down to wherever it was connecting to. Now, Jay,
Yes.
okay, wasn't there something about how they were gonna bring it partway and then do the rest later or something?
Well, it looked like it was all hooked up.
Okay.
So that's the lawn, that's how well the lawn was established. And this was the little washout over here.
I see the washout already.
There's like a, connected to it.
And Plain Street is
And
up
then
here?
Yes.
coming out and then
It's all downhill.
site
The house is
and
over
then-
here.
There's Plain Street, everything's downhill towards that.
That's a house maybe across the street? That's definitely not, is this that new house or is that a house across
You
the
see.
street? That looks like.
That is another house across the
Oh,
street.
too far away.
I'm shooting up the hill, this will
Right.
show the washout to Mr. Hardy.
This is, this is probably like a pretty big house here, which is the house in question. It's from-
Cool.
And then, yeah, it goes down into a valley where there's sewer easement, and so this is the sewer connection.
Great.
So it's kind of a sewer line that runs over the top of the underground brook or something. It's kind of a strange addition.
It's the,
Yeah,
back when you
I remember
put
both
sewer
of these.
pipes down along streams,
Yeah.
it was gravity. Okay. So basically,
there a
they're gonna
question?
have to come back when they're ready, when they think they're ready to take that remaining piece of silt fence out.
And I said, give me a call in at the end of September and I'll take another look at it then or whatever, so. You can see that just, it wasn't growing as fast as the lawn was growing in that section, that's all. No real concerns.
So we can put these in the 74 Plain Street file. That should be there. Thanks, Jen.
That's good
No
too.
problem. You can put that in there also.
Okay.
Is this the way to the sewer?
That
As
was
well?
the brook, the dry brook bed.
So the sewer runs.
Can you do the meeting minutes first and then?
Oh, yeah, let's
Yeah.
see the pipe.
So we
Okay.
can-
No.
This is just about like the community garden.
Oh, yeah,
There's
that
just
comes
been
later.
a slide, so.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's
no,
kind of a
but-
strange thing.
No,
The
really.
city engineer was there when we did the site visit, so he was very familiar with what was going on there, so.
Okay. All right, so.
Yeah,
And that's all I had for extra
this is
things.
what I have to deal with.
All right, so let's move on to meeting minutes approval, August 24th, 2015. Chris, did you print out a copy?
You know what?
I have the copy.
Dan has one.
It's
Okay.
on
I
here.
don't think I did because we didn't finalize it.
Okay,
No.
so,
I wrote up on it.
I wrote up on it too.
awesome.
But
Yay.
nothing.
Yeah, I
can't
didn't really
find.
have too much either.
Is it relatively minor?
It
So
just
can
was
you-
my notes from the health agent that I,
Oh, thank you.
so it's
Oh.
not anything.
I thought you meant like
So
you
are
had
the notes from the
changes.
health agent,
No.
those were in tonight's minutes,
They're in the
right?
minutes, but they're just my notes to remind me of
Oh.
the names of who I
I
was
see.
talking about, because I was not familiar with Mr. Kanicki, I never heard of him.
May I take those minutes and put them in, into my meeting minutes from this meeting? Because that would be more relevant.
I have a couple of comments on there too.
Jeez Louise, what is it?
An extra
I
Dan
dropped the
Hagen.
cap.
I got the extra Dan Hagen and I got the visit.
What's in that?
So,
Diet
oh, I
Dr.
didn't get
Pepper.
this.
Oh my
And,
God.
It's delicious.
and,
Not my wish.
and,
Don't even.
yeah.
So what is the,
So the only edit I did not get for Mr. Ruttrick's comments were, he would like to add, so there's a sentence that says, there was a strong storm on the Saturday prior to the site visit, there was still standing water in a low area during the site visit. He just wants to add there was, still standing water in a low area within the field during the site visit, which makes sense. The other was a question about the city's 200 scale mapping. You, what, didn't?
I couldn't figure out what they were saying. Didn't know where you were going with that.
we had a parcel map set to 1 inch equals 200 feet.
Yeah.
I had that, but
What does it say?
what's the context?
It does seem to be added on to the beginning of the
From-
sentence.
It might be. It's very possible it was carryover. from
It's
something
making
It's
it
not
look,
really
the
pertinent
sentence is
to-
making it look like the
Exactly.
sentence
Like,
the,
the map is important to the sentence?
yes, exactly.
We could leave the
Yeah,
reference to the
map is
map
important
since
to
it's
the
not pertinent to,
Yes, we can.
okay.
And just clarify at the beginning that it was a site visit and not a meeting.
Meeting.
I did get that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay.
That was one thing I got. Alright, so we'll start that paragraph with per the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act. And still standing water
In the field.
in a low area within the field during the site visit. Sweet. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
And I'll add.
Did you have the double Daniel Hagen Jr.?
Yes, I got the double Daniel Hagen Jr. Three
Yes.
Daniel Hagens were
There's
present.
lots of hands going on there. Well, because I had both, and then she's like, there was 2 Dans, and then I was like, oh yeah, look, because I added that one in. I'm like, yeah, there is only 1 Dan, and I didn't go down and see that one, so I added the third one in.
Yeah, very good.
And then I took it out.
Okay,
So now it's 2.
so is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes as revised during this discussion?
I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes as revised during this discussion.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Did
Great.
I?
Are there any other?
Yeah, I actually would
have
have
an
this.
item I'd like
Just-
to bring up.
Yes.
So I received a phone call this morning from a concerned citizen who witnessed a landscaping company pulling water out of Lower Mill Pond.
Again?
A different one, I think.
Awesome, okay.
So, I don't remember what the outcome of was the
They
last,
stopped.
because we notified them, right? We sent them
Right.
letters.
Right.
So this was Maderos Landscaping is what they witnessed. And so I couldn't remember what we had done last time that this
I'll go
happened.
back into the records and find the letter we sent, basically saying,
Stop doing it.
Stop.
Please don't do this, or get a permit to do this.
Right.
And quantify your impact.
Right.
Is there one spot, like, is it the same
They
spot?
probably
doing
back
all-
down
And
that
they probably
paved
go-
spot.
They probably back down to where the boat launch is what I'm guessing, cause it's paved.
So I guess if you could, so this morning,
And
so.
where are they taking water from?
Lower Mill Pond.
And you received the call directly.
I received a voicemail, yes, a follow-up email.
Wait, what did you get?
I got a
Voicemail.
voicemail,
Yep.
called them back, spoke with them, and then I asked them to send me the name of the landscaping company that they witnessed and any photo documentation they might have.
Did they
just sent
have
me a
any?
name, no.
Can you forward that email?
I can.
Thank you. So I'll draft a letter and send it off to, do you know where Madeira's Landscaping is from?
Munson.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with them at all.
Munson? That's a long way away,
Yeah.
The only thing I can think is that they've got,
the project in the area.
yeah.
The water is just that good.
In Lower Mill Pond.
And others have witnessed pool companies withdrawing water,
Well, that's even
but
closer.
nothing.
Oh, God, I can filter it.
Yeah.
You have to treat it.
Okay. Can we just sign up?
Well, that's what I'm wondering is like if this is, you know, what,
Common.
yeah, if this is common, you know, sending out letters every time somebody reports this is not
yeah.
efficient. So is there a different way to deal with this? Is there some
Should we have an article written about it? in the
public
newspaper?
education campaign or something about,
Is there, you know how there's,
Put a sign up on the ramp or?
yeah,
Yeah.
National Pond Steering Committee, does anyone, is there such a similar
that's a
group
good idea.
interested
There is.
in Lower Mill Pond?
well, I've been trying to encourage them to be just a ponds committee.
Right.
That's a good idea.
There aren't that many public water bodies in Easthampton, so.
But there's at least 3 ponds.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
It-
So there
it's
should
not
be
like
3,
they're,
not just one.
it's not like the Lakes region.
Right.
Making a motion?
I don't believe that's within our jurisdiction.
Yeah.
It's
I
mandatory.
move to make the bonds committee responsible for all the bonds. Second.
Let's
All those in
not
favor?
do, okay.
What's the third pond? Just,
Lower Rubber Thread?
Rubber Thread Pond.
which one's that?
The one
So
right behind
right-
us.
right-
Right behind
The
the
parking
building.
lot?
Rubber thread?
Well, they named, this was
That's what they made.
Rubber
Rubber thread,
City.
Suspenders.
That's what.
That sounds like-
Easthampton was the Rubber City.
Oh,
Dude.
It's only separated from Mashwanic Pond by
Little road and a culvert.
Wow.
We still have.
But the road has been here
plastic
for-
making places in
Wow.
town, right?
long term.
Well, and Williston Pond is technically upper rubber thread
Right,
pond,
yeah.
if you look at the Google Maps, it's just, which I think would be very convenient.
Great.
We have Williston paper city, that's just. Okay, so, thank you. You had a follow-up item that I don't want you to talk about, but you will, because it means I have to do something. Okay.
I want to readdress the conservation area at the
Echodale West,
yeah, Echodale
the
West.
Orchard, Echodale West.
Because we did like half of the delineation there, but I know we want to try to do like a boardwalk maybe, or like a little walkway, or like something with that area, not just have trees grow wildly.
So for.
Is that the park right next to the open?
So, yeah,
Community
and then the Orchard.
Yeah, the art in the orchard.
Well, the city's orchard, that's unmaintained
Yeah,
and
that doesn't
becoming a
it's a
problem.
mess.
He's doing good.
I'm doing fine.
This is the same thing we've been talking about for years, Chris.
I only know because I actually went to the art in the orchard. I'm like, wow, that orchard is a mess. Who owns that? Oh, it's
Never mind. Right. So, did you refresh my memory, Jessica? Did you sketch up?
I did, and then I think you
I can't remember what happened.
brought up the idea of making sure that it connects to other trails that are
Right.
So
But
then-
do we have mapping of those other? I know. I feel like I've asked this
We do,
before.
and you know who we might be worth bringing in is Garrett Stover.
Ooh, okay.
Maybe I can get him to come to a commission meeting when we don't have much going on the agenda.
I don't think we actually have much on the
Okay.
next agenda.
Yeah.
Because I think he's very much interested in making sure that the trail system up there is connected, and we've been having discussions about Lathrop and their open space and how it's configured and connecting that, and so it's a much bigger kind of sub-region in terms of the conservation up there.
The city doesn't have any GIS capabilities in-house, does
We
it?
don't, but that's why
Is that
we can always go to
something-
PVPC though.
Hmm.
I mean, I get 2 free days of staff time. We don't have GIS, we don't have the software. I mean, Jamie's got something that she's kind of MacGyvered together, but it's not like
That's
it's,
commendable, but
um,
it's hard. Okay.
yeah.
How can we find the maps of existing trails?
Of the what?
Of existing trails.
Well, I know that PVPC did do a big regional trails project not that long ago. So they've got final products, and I'm sure they've got GIS data leaders, and, we could ask them to put something together if they've been documented. I think they actually went out and GPS'd a bunch of stuff.
That would only be public trails that were existing in public at the time.
But I'd say maybe 3-4 years ago.
3 or 4. Okay. Maybe.
Isn't PVPC working with us on trails on the area where the
No, but you'll see the top
Past
request correspondence
Correspondence.
is how they came a couple years ago and tried to sell their
Joint,
conservation agent services, but it's like, when you got a huge overhead cost, you don't get a ton of hours for the amount of money that you dish out. It's like, what, $2,500, you get 20 hours of their time.
right.
1,500.
$1,500.
See,
For 20
it's a
hours.
bargain deal.
Bargain deal. You all work in the private sector, so that's nothing to you, but.
No, I just noticed you said 2,500, so we immediately knocked 1,000 off the price tag.
So anyway, I mean, if that's something we're interested in, I mean, that, I'm saying that they've got a program in place. The junior cities planners giving me eyeballs.
Okay.
So think about it, I guess.
So how
you know.
about-
But I can get the mapping for free, no cost, that's easy.
I feel like that would be tremendously helpful to have the
Okay.
mapping to work on
So
from.
ask them to do if they can give me a base map of public trails up in that region of the city.
Yeah, yeah. With, ideally, it would also have like topography. I don't think the LiDAR
Okay.
barely dips into the northern part of Easthampton, but.
Did they prepare the open space plan?
Did they do these?
They did
what?
some of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
so they probably have
They
all
did the
the-
mapping part of it.
Yeah, they have all the maps ready, they just.
I mean, they
overlay the
honestly, they've
trails.
got all the most up-to-date data layers for the city,
Yeah.
pretty much everything. We give them the parcel IDs every year, so.
And scan and email. So what I will do is scan and email a PDF of this so that everyone has it
Okay,
for discussion at the next meeting maybe.
okay.
So you'll ask Garrett Stover then to.
Yeah,
Next
I can
meeting.
do that as well.
And what I remember from the meeting when we actually did the site visit is that there are potentially historical things in the woods, but that nobody has determined that
What they
they're
are.
of concern, so.
Were you also gonna do a wetland delineation?
Yeah, we need to finish that. That's
Okay.
what Colleen was saying.
Yeah.
We got about halfway
Yeah,
through
about
and ran
halfway
out of
through.
time,
Right.
So then we
so.
have to figure if we need to map it and how we want to do that. We just want to limit the areas.
Yeah, we need GPS and someone to provide the shape files to PVPC.
Okay.
Because
Well-
that's going to be a part of the trail alignment.
Yeah.
Which they were able to take the data that your husband had collected.
So Great Ross can go and ride the boundary. It'd be great.
I could walk it.
Where is
Go
that,
ahead, walk it.
where is that project, by the way?
Right, that's what I'm wondering. Whatever happened to that? That trail property.
Porchesky,
Yeah,
Porkowski.
That's in.
it was in Rich's
It was in Rich
hands
Lombard's hands and.
to come back with some trail reconfigurations, is that
Yeah.
correct?
And then we kind of rained on the parade by highlighting or
Natural heritage issue.
natural heritage and water department land use restrictions, like
Mhm.
it's for watershed protection
yes,
and
yes,
not
yes.
recreation even.
Didn't he come back and was like, oh, somebody fixed all the trails, so we're all set, or something?
That
I
might
swear
happen.
That would be
I can
funny.
imagine that happening.
I remembered that happening.
Yeah, it just kind of fell off the radar, that's
Yeah,
for sure.
I think that was the
Did
that was
I
the last
ask
thing I remember.
Barbara?
Sure.
What's the title of that again?
Borchowski.
Oh gosh, Borich.
Borchowski.
Just like it
Close?
sounds.
I don't know. Wait, what?
Borchowski.
Close, you got the K.
And
Wait,
lots of the other
B-O,
letters.
B-O-R-U.
C-H.
Yeah, the H, I didn't get the K, got you.
You did?
Yeah, I got you.
Switch
There's, okay,
Switch
gotcha.
it.
Yeah, right, you said it right, actually. All right, so what's gonna happen with that?
I'll just see if I
Jessica?
can follow up and see where that's at and maybe try to get an update at the next meeting or
Okay,
possibly next. I think I have to go.
yeah.
My whole family's in the back of my head.
Staring at the front of me.
Okay, is there anything else we need Jessica for tonight?
No, the
No.
only thing we,
Thank
we,
you.
no.
Okay,
Go.
I'm out.
Go
And
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for speaking to zoning issues
Sure.
so succinctly.
Okay, I need to get off my lap now because I don't want to be here anymore. Okay. Thank you all.
taking her back. What was it? Microburst.
Okay.
Since we're still under other, do we want to talk about your discussion? Have you had a discussion with the trail with Barbara Lombard?
Other than that, we need to talk about the rail trail meet.
Yeah, I know.
They're there if you need them.
I know. I'm not
Surprise.
yet. It'll happen soon. But because I did see the email correspondence about that. So did you
That-
actually meet with her?
No,
Okay.
no, we haven't taken it any further.
Rail
I
trail.
think I'm just gonna have to subject someone to my children while Dan Code is at a cross race.
Okay, so you're gonna meet with her.
Pretty much what it is.
If you pay them.
With
My
her.
children?
No.
That's what I was at that too. Pay the
You
kids.
take care of yourself.
They're like 4.
There's a Lego kit in it for you.
It's actually a word thing tonight.
Thank
Paying the
you.
kids to watch themselves.
Yes.
Does anyone care about chickens on a residential property under 15,000 square feet at 7 Valley Lane?
We heard about them before.
How many chickens are these people?
That was
I
an
feel like
SSD
it
already
keeps
listed.
coming
It's a
up.
different place.
No, this is different.
No,
This
no,
is
Valley Lane,
Williston.
we already did.
Why is everyone getting chickens all of a sudden? Is there a rush on eggs?
Actually,
It could just be one that we didn't
there,
file. 'cause we didn't
there
know
was
what
an
to do
avian
with it.
flu problem
That's
with
true.
chickens, so prices went up.
So everyone's getting chickens.
Yeah, because chicken feed is less than eggs.
About
The hipster movement came to Easthampton like 3 years too late.
I'm gonna
Actually,
stop
I came here
talking.
before I came anywhere else.
Can we
Okay,
go back to the rail trail thing? I'm still back on
No.
rail trail. What do you mean with her specifically about the rail trail maintenance plan or
O&M,
operation maintenance plan? Okay.
O&M.
Yep.
And coming up with a general O&M plan that could then be permitted, and then they could continue to extend the permit
Yep.
to allow ongoing maintenance activities within the original footprint of rail trail construction.
Going back to the Park Hill Orchard thing, Melissa and I know how to build boardwalks now. We learned on Wednesday night.
Really?
Oh, geez, Louise.
Oh, God. What happened?
We were in puberty.
Diamond
My head
Piers.
still hurts from that.
Oh, come on.
No.
Open the shut case.
Step one, complete. Okay, Joe Pipchinsky, Director of Public Works, is inviting, sorry, to invite Conservation Commission to attend a public informational meeting on the Integrated Water Resources Management Planning Project conducted by the Department of Public Works in the city of Easthampton. Meeting is on Tuesday, September 29th, 2015, 5:30 p.m. in the City Council Chambers in the City Office Building, 50 Payson Avenue. Oh, crud. Easthampton maintains many natural water resources, such as Barnes Aquifer, Manhan and Connecticut Rivers, and Nashawanack and Lower Mill Ponds. These resources are essentially being protected by aging wastewater, drinking water, and stormwater systems. Aging infrastructure creates an increased risk of failure to perform as intended and meet increasingly stringent regulatory requirements. The DPW has initiated the IWRMP project to identify and prioritize cost-effective capital improvements to protect the city's natural water resources. Anyone available
Sounds like that's
Tuesday,
something we should go
September
to.
29th, 5:30 p.m.?
I'll see what's going on.
Jay will look
Yeah, I'll
into
try it,
schedule.
I'll try it.
Nice.
That's
Get
the
that
night,
in.
5:30. And that's the night after our
Next meeting.
next meeting, so I really would prefer, as much as I'd like to go, that's a lot.
Is it an informational meeting or a, like, discussion? type?
Public informational meeting, I believe is the phrasing. You could ask Libby or Poppy.
Yeah, probably.
I can copy that.
What's that?
Libby and Poppy are copied on it.
September. It sounds like something we really should be at. It's kind of related directly to what we do. It sounds like.
It is, especially as it pertains to,
Public and resource areas.
yeah, well.
Yup.
Well, public infrastructure improvement projects with the intent of maintaining existing infrastructure, or perhaps improving things like stormwater.
So Commissioner Ryan wants to see if he can attend.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to go?
I'll try.
On her
But
way?
I probably won't.
Okay. Who are we kidding? I can't do it.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, cool. Commissioner Ryan.
good night. Just go.
Here's my pacing stick. He goes, "Is this a selfie stick?" No.
Nice. Where's Summit Ave?
Can we just go back to chickens for a second? And then we're gonna get forward. Do we have to do anything with this chicken
No,
thing? Do I need to put it in the minutes?
There's
No.
Done.
nothing within 200,
Sorry,
no
excuse
water.
me.
in
You've
200
been here
feet of
too long.
chickens.
Okay, what's next?
Where is Summit Avenue? Can
Up
somebody?
high.
Up.
Or it goes there, anyway.
Do you want the,
Somebody
do you want the
please.
evidence? They're right there for you.
I make the rhythm in it.
Jay is hot on the
Google it.
case.
Thank you, Jay. Yeah.
So, I mean, it really does sound like something that's like.
Okay, these came out
Right
of our
at the base
vending
of
machine
downtown.
today, by the way. I really have to talk to Ray. They're all like cracked and.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass this right by.
Aren't they for you, Chris?
I used up all my calories on vodka.
Already?
Not today. But over the summer, I have to fit my pants.
yeah.
You really don't.
Oh.
These things are so tight.
Okay, may I remind you, we are being recorded.
I know. That's why I stopped it. These things are so tight. ...
Summit Avenue is off of 141. If you're heading towards the mountain, it's on the right side. So it's like past Water Street by 6 Streets.
Before
something like
Hendricks.
that. Yeah, before you get to Hendricks. So.
Okay, so the number is
No, it wants
It
to
isn't
be.
high, really.
15.
Oh, there it is. No?
No, it's over here. It's one of these.
Yeah. Like after duty.
The end of the parcel at the end of Duty Ave is partially in buffer zone.
So 15 looks like
Based
it's
on
at the
previous
corner of
Is that- that's
Plaza
where she
and
went?
Summit.
Isn't partially in buffer zone too. I'm sorry,
It's okay, go ahead.
Pond.
It was like my very first site visit here
It
was.
was, and
duty,
Kelly
yeah.
couldn't get through it without giggling.
Yeah, duties.
Let's talk about your duties.
You talk about me. What did you talk
So anyway, what's happening with Summit Ave?
Special permit variance application to construct a single-family home on a non-conforming lot at 15 Summit Ave. What's today's date?
The 14th of September.
Okay, so their hearing for this began September 10th, but we're just getting this now because of the dates of meetings. Can you identify parcel map and lot?
Would it be in buffer zone?
Well, there is
Oh,
there's a
sweet
brook
Jesus,
running
they
behind
cut
it,
off the-
kind of.
Honestly, map and lot, can we, they didn't fill it in and it's cut off the,
It's kind of on the corner of Plaza Avenue and Summit, but Broad Brook is behind Summit Avenue somewhat.
Yeah, it must be close, right?
okay, so I think the answer is commission will follow up on potential areas subject to Wetlands Protection Act jurisdiction relative to this sublot.
Was that supposed to be 7 minutes?
Yes.
15 Summit?
Yep.
Avenue?
Yep.
In a way that you're not expecting. Like they've already melted in your mouth.
Melt in your mouth and also in the bag.
And what's the comment I want to put in here?
Gotta look at
I've never seen this
We'll
before.
review
Broad
city and
Brook
state
runs
mapping
behind
relative to
it.
potential
We're gonna be open in case of the
wetlands
vomitus tonight, I guess.
Wetlands Protection Act jurisdictional areas.
If you're a teacher though, you're what, in your second week of school?
No vomit yet. Just
Yeah,
lice.
no, I was just gonna say, oh, just lice.
Not in my
Oh, oh, I have a story for you.
But
for
not in my
after.
sixth. We're fine. Fifth. My 10th.
So Broad Brook runs behind 15 Summit down, behind the end of Summit Street down there somewhere, but I don't know what the distance is right
So existing non-conforming lot,
there. I don't
but
know.
I don't,
It's all full of houses already.
it's all full houses, so I don't,
So sometimes the numbers don't always line up with what's happening.
but maybe it's demo and reconstruct.
Right.
This looks like it's like at the corner.
It looks like it's in the
What's
corner.
it proposing to do?
Construct a
Plaza
single-family
Avenue.
house. So,
Is Jessica still here?
no,
Am I supposed to be typing again? Damn it.
okay, so this goes
My carbon
into,
monoxide detector is going off at home apparently. That's right, don't do that out there. Yeah.
is he
Great.
outside?
Yeah, I-
Jumped open a window.
I just told him to throw it out the window.
No,
So is that, alright, so I just said that, okay.
are there,
Because I told him I was not listening.
looks like PCT recorded their order of conditions. Is this stuff that didn't get filed?
Yes. That's what I was trying to tell you.
Right, I did. Garden committee, does anyone update? Dan Buttrick, Rick Tufts?
Talked about that last week.
Fine.
that's waiting to
So
be
it just needs to be
filed,
filed.
too.
Yeah.
Screw you all for not filing shit. Okay, this. I mixed up my letters.
I propose we end the meeting.
Are there any other discussion items? No. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved.